welcome back to the Shock Absorber podcast, and it's awesome to have you along with us, and it's very exciting because we have two lovely people here along with me. Welcome to Tim, as usual.
Thank you, Joel.
Welcome, and substituting in, we're just listening to a song called Substitute by The Who. Tim, it's not Tim's job. Tim is here as usual.
We do get confused as each other.
That's true. That does happen, which...
Just happened then.
I just did it then. But I'm like, maybe that's why it happens. But Jai, welcome. It's lovely to have you along with us. How are you?
Good to be here. Thank you. Good.
No worries. You've got a Red Sox hat on?
I do.
Good. Did you enjoy, have you been watching the World Series?
We were actually watching it yesterday.
We were, yeah.
Yeah, the last game.
I haven't watched the last game so far. Apparently it was a good one.
Yeah. Don't want to spoil it?
No, we shouldn't. This will come out afterwards. So the Dodgers won, didn't they?
Yeah. Came back from, they were 5-0 down. Came back 6-5. Very...
I think didn't they win 7-6?
7-6, yeah. Sorry, yeah. But came from behind in the 7th inning, somewhere around there.
There's something cool about, and you and I have played baseball, enjoy baseball. There's something cool about the World Series in that it is, like they play so many games. It's like, it's such a drawn out season that it comes to this moment where they're playing, it's a 7-game series, they're playing across the country. Yeah. They come over they're playing in Yankee Stadium that game. Yeah. And then it comes down to the final pitch kind of thing. That there's the possibility that can happen in baseball. And it's like this moment. That's why they say in America, they love to say it's the hardest sport to do because you've got to hit a ball traveling at upwards of 90 miles an hour with a stick. Yeah. Yeah. It's really, really hard.
Oh, totally.
But there's something special about playoff, especially World Series baseball. I don't know what it is, but I really enjoy watching it. Yeah. The tension, I think, is...
Yeah, a lot of tension. Yeah, a lot on the line.
A lot on the line, that's right. Yeah. Anyway, that could be our first cultural artefact. Our second one, though, that we agreed to talk about is... We couldn't really think of the right name of it, but kind of like meal replacement or nutritional replacement drinks. The one that I started off with, it was something called Huel, which I've heard about, so many of these things are advertised on podcasts. That's where I hear about it. It's called Huel, Huel, because it's human plus fuel, and they call it nutritionally complete food, which is actually a drink. It's really just a drink that you just have. And Tim, you were saying in a previous job where you were on the road a lot.
Yes.
Something like that might actually have been helpful for you. But. Yes.
Yeah. I tried those, what are they, the man shakes for a little while.
The way you said that, the man shakes. Did you shake the weight off?
No, not really. No. I was saying this before that actually I just got really hungry with them. Ooh. That they weren't particularly satisfying. Maybe they weren't nutritionally complete enough.
Like Huel,
yeah. But it was helpful to have something on the road that was relatively inexpensive, easy to travel with. That was very good because the other alternative, you got all your fast food options, but even if you're trying to be healthy, you can go to Woolworths and buy some sushi. It's still like $10 to get something relatively healthy, or $8 salad or something. So to get something that was worked out about $3, $4 a serve was quite cost effective and apparently fully nutritional. But apparently, no, I got super hungry just having shakes. It was terrible. Yeah. It served a purpose for a little while. The other thing that is in my mind, because I listen to a lot of podcasts, so you hear about Huel, what's the Chris Williamson one? The
Newtonic,
the AG ones. These are all like massively popular in all of the podcasting ads. But it sticks in my mind when I listened to I read Ultra Processed People, which is a book I read early in the year, and he kind of debunks a lot of this. I mean, it's earlier than a number of these more modern nutritional supplements, but he's citing all this scientific research that says actually if you drink your nutrients, it does almost like it doesn't do anything for you that eating the nutrients does. And there was one study that stuck in my mind where he talked about apples, and he got one group test case to eat an apple, one test case to just put the apple straight in a blender and then drink that, and another group to drink an apple juice that had been concentrated or whatever. And what was the nutritional benefit of all of those? And unsurprisingly, the concentrated apple juice didn't have a lot of health benefits in terms of what they were measuring in, sugar and body and all those kind of whatever. But what was most interesting was that the people who ate the apple and those who threw it in a blender and drank that, there was still a noticeable difference in the uptake of nutrients between those two. And I don't remember from the book if there was an answer to that, but part of his whole argument in that book is that we are complex systems as humans. And actually there is something about the way that we consume food and actually eating nutrients as opposed to taking it in a pill, taking vitamins. He has a significant section on why vitamins are basically useless. And that for those who, unless you are actually malnourished, that a vitamin supplement is not going to do anything to you. And even these kind of, you drink your Neutronics or your Huel, is not actually going to do the same thing as eating the food is going to do. Now, as far as I know, the guy who wrote this book is not a Christian, but to read it as a Christian made me think, yeah, God has actually made us to be a complex system where we actually eat close to what is in the creation, seems to actually work best. And scientists aren't necessarily sure why that's the case, but from a number of the studies that this guy and ultra-processed people cited, that seems to be the case, that actually eating your nutrients as close to the source, as close to the farm as possible is the best way of actually absorbing the nutrients. And the more processing you do, whether it's just chucking in a blender and drinking it or all the way through to these ultra, and this thing with these are ultra processed things, the amount of scientific and in the lab kind of work that they need to do to create this kind of drink that you're going to have that has all this nutritional benefit. It's massively processed. And so that's problematic as well.
To turn it into something like that, you have to spend a lot of time on it.
Yeah, it's a lot of science behind that, which, not that I'm anti-science, but it's just you're pulling apart, you're completely at an atomic level stripping things down and then trying to recreate them and build them up again. The Christian answer is that's not how God has made us to do. But even if you weren't a Christian, it would be, that's not the evolutionary answer. We're not evolved to take nutrients in that way. And so trying to trick the system into taking these nutrients. Whether you want to take an evolutionary answer or a creational answer or, somewhere in between, it's just our bodies aren't designed to have it this way. And so they may have some use, but actually just going out and eating a piece of fruit is probably going to be better for you long term.
And the complex systems idea is so fascinating to me because I was talking to my kids driving somewhere and we're looking at trees. So I can't remember why, and just saying, how wild is it that God created the system that the stuff that we breathe out, the trees take, this is a very simplistic version obviously, but they take the carbon dioxide that we breathe out, they take it and turn it into oxygen for us to breathe.
Yeah.
That's such an incredibly complicated system in itself,
let
alone the entire ecosystem or however you want it, the environment and how it all works togetger with animals and all that stuff as well. It's just
all of that ecosystems thinking blows my mind and I love it. There was an article ages ago about the dingo fence that they put in some part of regional New South Wales to stop the dingoes eating the sheep.
Okay.
So all the sheep farmers put this massive dingo fence in, and they were showing, there was pictures in this article of this lush green area and this dry barren area, and the dry barren area was the sheep farmers, and the lush green area was where the dingoes are still allowed to roam.
Yeah.
And again, they talk about the complex ecosystem that you cut out the dingoes, which means they're not now no longer predators to kangaroos and all of these things that eat the greenery. So on the sheep side of the fence, you've now got kangaroos that are in plague proportions because they're not being controlled by the dingoes. They therefore eat more vegetation. The vegetation dies. They don't get to self-pollinate. And so, cutting out, thinking, isn't this clever? We can keep the dingoes away from the sheep. But again, the whole ecosystem collapses at that point. And again, it's just another example of how awesome it is.
But even speaking to your industrialisation of food thing, and is all of farming as well. There's a big thing in America where there's too much cattle on a particular property, so it's it's misused, so therefore the soil isn't as good. So then it affects how farming happens as well. So there's all those things are so interlinked. And I think sometimes maybe as humans and perhaps using technology to think it's a good thing, we end up actually having worse effects later on because we take it to an efficiency, productivity level that we think we can take it all the way to. Even that new tonic drink that we're talking about it's a productivity drink. So it's not so much about your health, it's to make sure that you stay focused rather than be able to stay.
Well, that's all those things are kind of playing into that. We're super busy. Yeah. So how can I get all my stuff that I need quickly so I can keep doing, so it doesn't interrupt.
I don't have to prepare a meal and
So you could sit there and you could be sending emails while drinking this and basically having a meal and keep working and never stop being productive, I guess, and forever sort of perpetuating that busyness of life. So you think about when you prepare a meal, you've got to stop. Disengage from one thing, start something else. You got to slow down, take your time. There's a lot of things that go into preparing a meal.
Things take a while to cook, for example.
Yeah. So all of a sudden now it's just like, well, throw all that out the window. I can just have this meal replacement now and just keep going.
Yeah. And this was, Stu talked last week about the slow food movement, which is this reaction against the, hyper efficiency movement of fast food, and this is a great example of fast food. It obviously doesn't have the unhealthy connotations of McDonald's and KFC and those kind of fast food, but it's highly processed, highly fast food because efficiency is the key. And I think part of what we want to talk about in terms of meals is you intentionally lose efficiency, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Even just one more example, I remember seeing that. So cows, I just googled what do cows eat. Natural diet consists mainly of grasses, legumes, alfalfa, clover, and hay. Makes sense. But then there's also corn-fed. I believe it's corn-fed beef, which is they eat it and they grow faster and fatter more quickly.
Yeah.
So then you can obviously produce it to sell quicker.
Yes.
Et cetera, but that's not what the cow was designed to eat.
Yeah.
The poor thing.
Well, I think this also came out of ultra-processed people, was he talks about the destruction of the Amazon rainforest and how so much of that Amazon rainforest is being cleared to make way for soy farming. And because the soy is being used to beef out these farm animals because, again, it radically increases the speed at which they will put on flesh, and so therefore the farming, and it will also be used for oils and all these kinds of things. And he talks about this really perverse cycle of these Amazon villages are largely being decimated because they're cutting through all this natural habitat, and so the people are losing their small micro farmings as well as destroying the environment to create the soy that can get shipped out to the Western nations for where it gets processed into things like oils and all these kind of ultra-processed food. He talks about Nestle and all the chocolate bars and all the things that they're making. And then that all comes then back and then you sell all of these, wonderful, surprising Western goods to these Amazonian people who are living along the thing. They're now getting unhealthy and fat, and now they're getting, all these health things like diabetes, which never existed in that cultures before, because of, and it's just this perverse cycle that goes around of this, and the highly processed part of all of that.
No, I think that's really, really, really fascinating to think, and especially as a Christian, you're like, I wonder, is that how God made us to be, or do we need to slow down? And I think that's where we're going. Obviously, this is our mini series on meals, and we're talking about how it's important. Last week especially, we talked about how it gives us the opportunity to slow down and be in community together rather than have a quick biscuit and tea and then off you go, and then I'll go do the thing that I was planning to do, or something else that I find more exciting.
Or just the very busy life that we have as 21st century suburbanites. That there's just so much on.
Yeah.
We're continuing our series on meals. And the last couple of episodes, we talked about having a theology and a strategy in place for how we do meals. And we think it's really important that we have that really solidly, because when we come to practice, how we're actually doing it, we're allowed, if we are strong in that theology and strategy, we can be really flexible in our practice. My first question to you guys, and Jai, why don't you go first? Sorry, Tim. I'll start with Jai and then we'll come back to you. How does that, like the practice of meals, how does that play out in your like particular position of ministry at Soul Revival Church?
Because I'm at a few different gatherings, it plays out. The practice is different across the board. So Yarrawarra, instead of doing like Kirrawee Sunday morning does, doing breakfast beforehand, we do a brunch afterwards. And so that's a little bit different in the practice. Cronulla, it's similar to our other ones where we have a meal, but the way that we position things and the way we do it slightly different. I know out at Ryde there's a whole pack up of church and then setting up of tables for dinner to be able to happen. So slightly different there again. Where Saturday night, Sunday morning, it's the cafe area is already set up and ready to go. So it's
we have an actual kitchen at that location.
Yeah,
as do Ryde as well. They have a kitchen of sorts to help. So that's always helpful.
And look at Yarrawarra, it's pretty much everything done on the barbecue.
Yeah.
So so those little changes, little differences, but we're only able to do those different practices because our theology and our strategy are so locked in that there is that flexibility, as we're saying.
Tim, your ministry?
Oh, in my ministry, so I'm primarily on Friday nights and Sunday mornings. They're often on Saturday nights as well. So Friday nights we do a meal in between our kids group and our youth group. And so we have this hour and a half in between where we're all staged all together. And so that part of that is the meal time. So the kids stick around after kids club and stay around for a meal and encouraged to stay for a gathering and another little small group discussion. The teenagers come early and we'll do meal, gathering, small groups. And the parents are encouraged to kind of stick around as well if they would like to and be part of that as well. And so the meal there is we have rosters of teams that come in and they cook that meal together. And then Sunday morning, yes, we do a big full breakfast. So we've got the location, the factory that we have there at Kirrawee, lots of cooking space, big barbecues, ovens, etc. So it's quite a large spread of anything you can imagine, sausages, eggs, bacon, baked beans, salad stuff, yogurts, mueslis.
What's that rice thing that Lisa does?
It's congee.
Congee, that's
which is really lovely as well. Sometimes there's porridge, particularly over winter. They'll have a slow cooker that's going away with the porridge that's been cooking for a long time. So it is quite a large spread there as well, which is great. And so one of the things that it's kind of a strategy that works out in practice is Stu talks a lot about wanting to delight people with what we present. And so again, while there's flexibility of practice, we want there to be an opportunity just to delight people. And so an abundance of food, it's theologically, you have this idea that God is a God of abundance. He's not a God of scarcity, that the ultimate banquet that we'll be sharing in new creation is one of abundance. And so, it's replicating some of that in our practice of saying, we don't need to be stingy with our meals. We don't need to do just cheap for the sake of doing cheap. Though, of course, we talked last week about the importance of being inexpensive to make it a leveling thing for all socioeconomic backgrounds, but just to delight people with the types of food. And they walk in and go, wow, this is amazing. How good is it you guys do this? So that's part of it playing out as well.
Well, I look at how, and I think that's where we're trying to get to begin with, is because we have that theology and strategy really strong, really clear, and underpinning everything we do. And one of the parts of the strategy is we do meals at every gathering. But the flexibility in the practice is, it might depend, like, for example, the timing of it. So if we go through all of our gatherings, Fridays is, as you said, Tim, it's like in the middle. It's directly in the middle. It's usually some people would usually think, we have to have it usually after. I think that if someone thinks of meals at church, it's after. But But that's what we're trying to say, is that the flexibility of the practice means that if you know how you're doing it, what you're actually doing can change around quite a bit.
Yeah.
So Friday's like in the middle. Saturday we say it's after the service, whether it's at Ryde or Kirrawee.
Yep.
Sunday morning it's breakfast before the service because it's Sunday morning.
Well, at Kirrawee it's breakfast before the meal, but as Jai said at Yarrawarra, they do like a brunch after, which again is a change of flexibility of what you do. And I also really like about Yarrawarra, I mean, partly because of there's a practical limitation on what an amount of equipment you have to make, but it also fits the outdoor, carnival, experience of all of churches outside. That's something you guys have talked about before on the podcast, of why we do it outside. But having, the barbecue running and just doing bacon egg rolls that have been cooked on the barbie kind of fits that. It's outdoorsy, it's flexible, people can wander in and out. We have all these non-Christians that come along and just grab a bacon egg roll and hang around for a bit and then go. And so there's a facility limitation, but it actually just lent into that because it shapes the whole vibe and the whole culture of what you're trying to create on Yarrawarra, which works so well.
Yeah, and we didn't start off with that.
Yeah, that's changed a lot, hasn't it?
Yeah, we actually started off by doing like the barbecue breakfast thing before church, and we realised that actually what was happening was that we were just doing food for those who were there, like just the leadership team who were there setting up. And then we were then having to do these kind of elaborate morning teas for everybody else because people wanted to hang around and they hadn't had breakfast because they come to church. And so it was actually one of those things where it was like, actually we just needed to think about this and pivot because we could be flexible in our practice. And so we eventually moved to that. And even that is still evolving. Like we started doing, it's not just bacon and eggs anymore. There was pancakes and tomato and spinach, and like it's trying to be a little bit more gourmet in some areas as well. But again, it's just those little sort of shifts and changes over time because nothing's ever kind of like locked in. This is how it has to be. Yeah. In that practical sense. And the thing I love too, like on Friday night, it's only half an hour. Like the meal's only half an hour. Where all the other ones, it's an extended period of time. Not so that it can facilitate the bringing together of those two groups in one moment, or three groups with the parents. Yep. So again, it's the going, okay, practically what's going to work best. Yep. To pull off what we want to do.
And having the confidence to do that because we know what our theology is and we know what our strategy is. And we can go, well, let's change it around to do it.
And also, it's just, as you said that, like half an hour never feels too short.
No.
Either, because actually the primary school kids that have hung out beforehand, they've had an hour and a half of program, but which a large part of that is hanging out and playing games together. So they've had a lot of that socialising. Now we're just kind of feeding as part of that. The teenagers are going to get all of youth group still happening. So they still get all of that community time that's built into that. So, and there's still that half hour in the middle where we do a gathering as well. So we meet around God's word, we do singing, we do prayers, formal kind of thing. Again, it's compact because of where we are on a Friday night and how the time all fits together. But half an hour is still a good amount of time. Like, I mean, you give kids a bowl of spaghetti bolognese, it's gone in about 3 minutes. So you've still got 27 minutes of relational time. Yeah. So you're not lacking in relational time either because of those other groups or because of even just that half hour. Kids come through, they eat quickly, then they play basketball and leaders are hanging out and having conversations. And so there's still lots of that relational community is still existing together. And then, as you say, we pivot into the gathering where we meet around God's word, and so that's a really key as well. Yeah. Just to finish the list that we started, so Miranda MCC, had breakfast beforehand, and then Cronulla does, as Jai said, has dinner afterwards. Right across all the 7 different gatherings that we have. That's how the meals work out.
Yeah, it's really fun, like just doing a quick survey of that and going, oh yeah, we do it at all different times, which is the point of what we're trying to get to. So my next question though is, if you're thinking from the perspective of someone who's thinking about doing meals or thinking, how do we expand this? How do we scale it up? Our answer first of all would be teams. but there's much more to it than that. So because if you look at those 7 gatherings, as you said, Tim, there's probably getting close to maybe probably feeding maybe 700 people, maybe 600, 700 people, something like that. I think someone's question would be like, how on earth do you do that? How do you do that without burning people out? What kind of structures do you have in place to make that happen? Because I think some of the kind of prevailing thought is that it's just like a couple of people doing it. That's kind of seems to be some of the observations that I've had from other people that I talk to with other churches, is that, oh yeah, well, we have like 3 people that do the cooking. And if you're serving that many people food for that many times over a weekend, that's not helpful. They're going to burn out. So why don't we start with, Jai, the service team structure and how that kind of facilitates that? Because really you weren't even there at the time, but when we started, we were feeding close to about 200 people when we first started the church. We still had a team. But now our service team structure is probably something where we should start. How do you want to tell the listeners and viewers how that works first? And then we can talk about like why it's so important to do it as teams.
So we have 10 service teams, and one of those, which is the relevant one for today, is hospitality. And so we have a pastor that looks after that service team with a central coordinator. We've got gathering coordinators. So each 7 of our gatherings have a coordinator for hospitality, and there are teams underneath those with team leaders and helpers and those sorts of things. And so basically, where you've got a whole team supporting teams to do something in teams.
Yeah, that's right.
And so if you're going to do anything with meals, teams is important.
Yeah,
that's the moral of this story, I guess. In a way. And so we've set those things up so there's always support. And we also have this thing, and we've spoken about this, you guys have spoken about this quite often too, is that we have this ministry slide thing. So if there is any time where people feel like, oh, this is just too much, we say, well, just slide out for a bit. And the good thing about sliding out is you can always slide back in when you feel like you're up to it. And so the whole thing is making sure that we don't burn people out. That's the last thing we want to do.
Yeah, because is there a danger? You tell me, because you guys have worked in been around and worked in different churches more than I have. The observation that I do have though is that we might say, yeah, we're going to start this ministry, get all excited about it, and often if a church is lacking a strategy in between their theology and practice, a couple of people go and do it, get really passionate about it, work really hard and well done, I'd say to them, but they end up burning out because they're working really hard, but other people don't see that ministry as important, so they don't feel like they should dedicate as much time to it, and then they feel not looked after by the church because they're like, look how much I'm doing. But I'm now starting to burn out and I can't keep doing this, but I feel obligated to keep doing it.
Yeah.
Is that something that you guys see, Tim? Or Tim, you go first.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it happens right across the board. It happens in children's ministry, youth ministry. It happens with people behind the sound desk, bands, and as well as hospitality. And so I think, as Jai said, the team's mentality is really important. And also one of the things we've talked about a lot on the podcast is the idea of being friends together. So it's you're friends in a team doing this ministry together. And that
serving
just means
together.
You're serving together, right. Yeah. And one of the things that we've found really, really early on was that by intentionally choosing to be friends and then doing service together, you actually grow closer together. And so you do become really good friends with those that you serve alongside with, which just creates that scaffolding network of support for people. And so we do find that people tend to last longer in serving teams because they're not serving out of neglect or having something dumped on them that they have to do, but working hard at serving in a team in something they see as important. So you do need to sell people the vision. And the great thing about hospitality is it's a very tangible thing in terms of everyone is experiencing it. So you can say to people, hey, you really like eating, don't you? And they're like, oh, I love it that your church eats together. Hey, it takes a lot of work to do that off. Would you like to come and join this team, be friends with this group of people, and every fourth Sunday or every once a term or whatever it is, contribute to this ministry that you really appreciate? And one of the other things, we've talked about this a number of times, that it's a low entry point for a number of people.
Yeah.
It's a low entry point in terms of spiritual maturity. So there are significant roles in our church that we don't want someone of a low spiritual maturity to take on. You know, I mean, preaching is, you know, kind of the ultimate.
Anything kind of up the front, like preaching.
Up the front things, you know, pastoral care of people, the teaching role, whether it is in a service or in a youth ministry or in a children's ministry, like Bible study leading, community group leading. So there's a lot of roles that we would say, there's a certain responsibility for appropriate eldership and maturity of faith for these particular roles. Flipping bacon on the barbecue is a brilliant thing that serves a church, but is a really good thing that you can say of someone of low spiritual maturity or someone who's feeling burnt out from something else. They might have been behind the sound desk and felt burnt out, like I'm doing this every week and no one is appreciating it because it's an unseen thing. Go, hey, slide out of that ministry and why don't you just come once a term and just help us cook. Just stand next to me, share life, and let's flip some bacon together as we talk about how your week's been. And you go, yeah, actually I probably could manage that. And so that's really good. It's a really good entry point for those who are checking out church, checking out Jesus. Say, well, like, hey, come with me. Like, let's keep this conversation going and let's dry up the cups together. You know, and just stand the, you know, wiping around. And so it is really relational. And one of the things we wanted to communicate in this episode today was that the meal is a significant part of our strategy, but even that is not the end game. Like that is still the means towards a greater end, which is that we're all growing as disciples of Jesus together. So, you know, while we strive hard to make sure we have the personnel resources, the monetary resources, the everything else resources to do meals well, at the end of the day, it's the person's spiritual development and their growth as a disciple of Jesus that is of most important. So we're not going to burn someone out for the sake of getting a good meal going. If really happened that we couldn't pull off a meal this week because for some reason the entire service team is cooked, and it's
they all got gastro or something.
They've all got gastro. It's like, that's okay. Like, that's fine. You know, maybe someone will go and pick up some Domino's pizzas, maybe not. Like,
no, we've done that before though.
We factor that in at Cronulla because we don't have as big a pool of people, a resource, you know, sort of people to pull together in teams. We do, I think, twice a term we do a pizza night to kind of ease the burden so that it's not so much for everyone.
And I want to just jump on that though, Jai, is that the intention behind that is different because we talked last week about
why don't you get it catered?
Yeah, because you could do that every week, couldn't you?
Yeah.
But actually, what you're doing there is caring for the teams that are cooking by giving them a night off, rather than we don't want anyone to be serving in ministry.
Yeah.
So like
because what it means is that because of the size of our teams at Cronulla, it means that everybody's on twice a term instead of two teams being on 3 times a term.
Okay.
So it just releases, it just frees them up for that. And because we're a smaller gathering as well, a lot of those people are doing other ministries in the service or in the gathering at some point as well. So it's the whole thing of not trying to burn them out and making sure we care for them and making sure that that we see them through and grow in their faith and not, you know, burn them out and kill them along the way. I think in doing so.
I know you weren't on the last episode, Jai, but Stu says something really points like, you are more important to us than what you can give us.
100%.
Absolutely.
100%. And we want to, we've always said this right from youth ministry days, that we want to equip people for a lifetime of ministry, not just a short burst of energy.
A year and a half or something.
You know what I mean? We want people to be in ministry and serving Jesus their entire life. And to do that, we've got to care for them along the way. And, you know, the question you asked about, you know, people getting excited about something and putting all their energy into it and then getting upset that no one else is on board with it. Like, my thing is that if anybody's ever in that situation, when you are the only one doing it all, what time do you have to bring other people on board with you? Like, you're focused so much on that and all your energy is going into that. Of course you're going to burn out because you're not drawing people in to form a team with you, like Tim was saying. You know, so it's that if you get excited about it, then invite other people to be a part of it.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. Can I keep going on that? So I feel like some people are having these questions, like listening to us get excited about meals and make sure you have teams and blah, blah, we serve 600 odd people. But how do you get people? I reckon their question is, and I don't like using that word "get," but how do you get people to jump on board and serve?
I don't think it's a get. I think it's Tim mentioned, is it the invitation, the personal invitation? I think more and more we're so used to getting digital requests for Facebook, Instagram, and even getting invitations to a birthday party or a wedding now is happening via Facebook, whatever that is.
And you can opt in out really quickly. Yeah.
Like that personal say, hey Tim, do you want to, like next week where you want to hang out and peel potatoes and we'll catch up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's just inviting people, like you invite better than that, but but it's just that invitation, that personal invitation, just really what I love walking into any of our gatherings where there's meals being prepared is I feel like I'm walking into someone's home and a family's preparing dinner together. And I feel like I'm walking in and experiencing that conversation and that joy and just that delight with one another, just to be hanging out and, we just happen to be preparing food at the same time. That, like inviting people into that, I think that's the beauty of the way we do meals.
And I think a reality that I was just thinking about when you said just come and flip bacon on the barbecue, there's that moment you can spend the relational time cooking on the barbecue. But then the moment you see everybody like pick up a piece of bacon and then bite into it, you're like, I've contributed to that and in love, you know what I mean? And I think, anyway, I was just getting sidetracked a little bit there. Tim, anything else about in terms of kind of building teams that you wanted to add to that?
Well, it is related to the bacon comment you just made. At a nerdy sociological level, people talk about contributive purpose. Like they want to have contributive purpose to something. So if you can communicate in a way that actually, I don't, not like I need you in it. Like I'm desperate and I'm. Often we ask out of burnout ourselves, and I know this from children's ministry. I'm actually not a very good recruiter because I find this really hard.
Right.
And so often I am asking people out of desperation. It's like, I'm burning out here. Can you help me not burn out by coming alongside me? And that's not a very great, exciting invitation.
I need you.
Oh, yeah. And people's like, whoa, back off. And they're also like, if this ministry is burning you out, why would I want to be a part of it? Like I don't want to be burnt out by this. So coming from a place of joy and saying, hey, this is really exciting. Like, how good is it that we get to share this particular thing together? But people love to see how they can participate, that they want to have contributive purpose and say, actually, it'd be great. Like, I want to hang out with you. I want to get to know you, or I want to catch up about the week, or, we could find some other time, or we could, meet at this time and peel potatoes. But it's also contributing, and people can see that. And again, the hospitality is just a really obvious way that everyone's sharing in this. Everyone is eating the bacon.
Everyone gets it. And
so you can kind of see how you cooking the bacon is helping contribute to the life of faith of this community
thank you.
going forward. And so it's an easy communication point at that level. And so it's all about, asking them all those usual things about volunteer recruitment that, lots of people have talked about, but, selling a vision, communicating helpfully, communicating in a way that they will listen to and understand. So there's lots of wisdom in other books about how to get volunteer leadership going. But one of the things we try to communicate, and this comes back to a strategy piece and also a theological piece, is we're a family together, and families chip in and they do things. And if you're coming together for a Christmas lunch, you ask everyone in the family to contribute something. Can everyone bring this? Can you buy this? Can you buy this? And and you ask according to people's needs. Some people love cooking, and they've got heaps of time, and you say, great, can you organise the whatever it is, the pavlova or the roast chicken or the whatever. Some people might be time poor but be able to afford to buy the bonbons and bring them along or whatever. Like, it's just everyone gets to contribute. And if there's someone in your family who is neither time nor resource rich and isn't able to contribute, you don't say, well, you're not allowed to come then. Like, you bring them in and say, no, come. Like, we still just come and receive, and that's okay as well. Or come and receive, and hey, here's the knives. Can you just chuck one on each place setting? Like, everyone has a purpose when you see it as a family. And this is where the joy can come from, when the people in the community of your church see this as, we're doing this as family together. The hard bit is where people see this as a service and I'm the customer and you are providing something for me and I get to complain about it's that night. I don't like, I don't like when you serve spaghetti bolognese, or we've got that in gluten-free. And it's like, we try and accommodate different things, but also enjoy this as a family meal together. We're not, a restaurant. You don't get to come in and complain about the service or
consume only.
Just consume, and you're not a customer. When we charge, we're not charging you for a product. We're saying, hey, can you contribute to the cost of our family doing this together? So that's hard. And again, it's really hard in 21st century suburbia when we are trained by everything else to be the consumer. The consumer is always right, that kind of mantra from the 80s and 90s. So we have that inbuilt in us. And so I think part of the deformation and reformation that needs to happen at a spiritual level for people is to see this is a community thing we're doing together because we're family. And that can help transform people as well. And participating in some way, contributive purpose in being part of the team or the wash-up team or the setting the table team or the whatever it is, can help with that idea that we are doing this together as family. Therefore, you are more important than the product, and also your contribution is really valued. I think that's really key as well.
No, I think that's really cool. I was just, as I was thinking that about the contributive purpose, a lot of our teams, for example, are based around families. So at Kirrawee on a Saturday night, which is probably our most established gathering, a lot of the families, there's a lot of families they're kind of the core part of the team, but then there's other people that join in with them. But that might be a way for people to say, if you want to build a meal or a cooking gathering for your gathering roster, you can invite different families. So I think at Kirrawee now it's just once a term. I think they do it. So you can get to
same
that
on
point
Friday night. We have once a term. We've got enough people that we can, which is great. Which is lovely.
And a really good way to maybe for people to start trying to build up a kind of roster that is actually and can work together in teams, and then you can add people onto it and invite them into that as well.
And I know that for some of those families that it's for a couple of the parents, it's a very intentional way to teach their children this is what it means to be part of a church community. We serve together. So even if it's getting your 4-year-old to, put some gloves on and separate all the cheese from the, big packet of cheese you bought so that it's easy get out with the tongs. Like you just separate the cheese slices so that they're on this platter in a way that's going to make serving it easier when you serve up the burgers. Or, hey, 7-year-old, can you grate the carrot for the salad? Or, 10-year-old, can you help do this? So even the very youngest kids, you see some of these families who are just, the parents have fully bought into this vision and they're wanting to communicate that to their children, and it helps those children grow up and never know any different, which is part of what Jai said, lifetime of service. From 4 or 5-year-olds are learning that this is what it means to be part of a church community. I serve, I share, I have a contributive purpose, and you see that, when you've got the 7-year-old who's, got their little tongs and they're serving the salad, and you get to have a bit of a chat with them, and they can see it. They can see, like, I am literally putting lettuce on people's plates
for like 100 plus people.
For 100, and it's just like, how good is that they get to share in that? They get a smile from people, and it's brilliant. It's a brilliant way of having this all age, all stage. We're all putting together, and it's a great way of doing that.
Yeah, I love it. So if you want to build a meal roster, invite a family to serve the church family. Cool.
That would be a good starting point.
That's a good starting point.
Or get a bunch of friends to do it.
And a bunch of friends,
of course.
Because if there's like we're a couple of teams where it's just like a whole bunch of friends are just doing it together.
Yeah.
And some of them, it's like, I don't cook at home. I don't really know how to cook. And there's one person says, do you know how to use a knife without chopping your finger off? Great. You chop the carrots. Yeah. And then, and it just.
And I think this is probably the other way to build teams. So it's those who are thinking, how do I build a team? if you can find one interested person and say, all right, who do you know? Who's in your small group, or who are you friends with at church? Who could you invite into this? And then, partly it's sharing the responsibility of recruitment, but it's also saying, like, you want to do this as a friendship group, and you're not just a roster. You're a friendship group that is coming together. And so if they go, well, actually, like, I really like this person and this person, we'll go and ask them and say, hey, I'm thinking of doing a meal for the church. I can't feed 50 people just by myself. I'm going to need a couple of friends. Would you come and be friends with me and help do this? So, you get one clued up person who's really sold on the idea, get them to invite a couple of their friends that they know and bring in. So, and I think just slowly building teams around that as well. I think it's a great way of doing it.
We mentioned an already set up team, like a community group or a Bible study might even be able to go, hey, look, as a Bible study, we want to go and serve and continue hanging out together. And do it even.
Absolutely.
So there's all those entry points into like families, community groups, or even just a group of closer friends. Like I think that's a really cool way to think about it. My last question was going to be a personal reflection on meals and like an experience you had, because I think about serving in youth ministry, and some of the best times that we had together was when we were actually doing all the cleaning up and washing up all the, we just had drinks and snacks and things like that. It involved a lot of whipping each other with tea towels, for example. But I remember someone once flicked a light switch off by whipping it with a tea towel.
Nice.
That's impressive.
But there's shared memories that we get to have. Another, just before I do that though, I just thought of another easy entry point is that even if you just have teams to help clean up, it takes the pressure off the people that have cooked. So we do that on.
Yeah, so we have two different teams.
Yeah, so we actually have two different teams. So that's an even easier entry point to just get, as we say, swing on a tea towel and just literally dry up or wash up the plates that people have had been able to eat off.
And I think you mentioned this last week or the week before, but the cleanup teams will sometimes buzz around the tables and collect people's plates, which also just helps serve. You're in a conversation with someone,
100%.
Someone else comes and scoops your plate out from under you, and it's like, oh great, I didn't need to break this good conversation in order to clean up the stuff. So that's another way that the cleanup team is actually serving the whole community by facilitating lengthy conversations.
And the cooking team.
And
so
the
they don't have
team.
to clean up after they've done all the cooking.
Maximising the number of people involved. So it is a resource heavy ministry. So it's financially resource heavy, it's personnel resource heavy. But because of that ease of access,
ease of entry, for sure.
You can, there is very little reason for many people of your church of whatever size not to be involved in this ministry. And so, is there anyone in this church that should be excluded from this ministry? There may be a couple of people for good reasons, but that's probably a small number compared to the size of your community. Whether you're a church of 20 or a church of 200 or more, there's very few people that couldn't be involved in this ministry. So therefore, why not invite everyone else? Like just open, like try and get as many people contributing as possible, because the entry point is so low, but it is so helpful, and it's just such a beautiful way of building community together.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And as I said, let's wrap up with a bit of a personal reflection on meals. But the point about just being in the kitchen is fun. Oh, you think about like last Saturday night at Kirrawee, the young kind of year 10 and 11s were going clean up, and they had music blaring in the background.
Songs for boys that girls listen to, or something. Some weird kind of. There's some weird playlist.
The playlist was songs for guys to listen to. Yeah, songs for guys that white girls listen to.
Oh, that's the one. That's the one. That's it. Yeah.
And they were all getting into it, but they're all having a great time and serving everyone by cleaning up everything. So it's all ready to go again. So, that there's all those kind of memories. That's what I was going to ask you. Do you have a memory about whether it's either serving in hospitality or just enjoying a meal together that you can remember that is like really kind of encapsulates like one of the main reasons why we do meals at church? Do you want to go first, Joy?
Every time.
easy
I can't think of a meal at church where I've not had a conversation with people that I might not have had.
Okay.
Highly likely wouldn't have had it not been for a meal after church. And being on one of the cleanup teams on Saturday night, like the conversation that you get to have while washing and drying up in such a confined space. I don't know, it's too, like as a guy too, like doing something seems to facilitate conversation as well. When you know, two guys are doing something. But I've had conversations about predestination, about life after death, a whole bunch of like real deep theological conversations while drying up a mug. You know what I mean? Like, it's just those, for me, it's those conversations that just happen because of either the meal or the activity of being involved in hospitality that often don't come up in other settings.
Yeah. It facilitates that, doesn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
What about you, Tim?
Yeah, no, I think the same thing. I think my main service in the hospitality team now is often on Friday nights. I kind of just unofficially do clean up stuff. So I'm often just hanging out in the kitchen. And because we have 10 different individuals or groups or families that serve, it's probably 10 different conversations that I'm having over the term with people. So they're often cleaning up stuff, I'm running the dishwasher, and we just, again, there's just lots of really good conversations. And for some of these, particularly some of the parents, it's a great thing as the children's minister to be able to say, like, not just how are you going, but how's your family going, how's the kids going. So it provides me a long, 20, 25 minute conversation with someone as we sort of, just busy around, we're just throwing stuff in the dishwasher, we're scraping things, just that conversation is just brilliant. So it again slows down and facilitates those kind of conversations, which is just excellent. And, sometimes they're really fun and frivolous conversations. Sometimes they're really deep and vulnerable conversations. So it's brilliant, like in terms of being able to do that. Yeah. The other one I was thinking of is, it's been a while since I've been on the coffee machine. But you get the people who come up and line up and, order their coffee, and it takes, a couple of minutes to make. And then again, it's a small conversation. It's more like we talked last week. It's one of those 7-minute conversations. It can be quite surface level at some ways, but it's just quick, but you get to see a lot of faces and say good day to a lot of people in quick succession. And so, and that I find really helpful if I do run coffee on Sunday morning, just to lay eyes on most people who come through the door.
Right, yep.
And so just to say good day to heaps of people. So there's that sort of opposite but equally beneficial thing as well.
Sorry, I forgot the other really important thing that really kind of came out during COVID is the amount of, as a pastor, the amount of pastoral care we're able to do during mealtime is really significant, because often as pastors, we kind of expect to be mind readers and know what's going on in everybody's lives. But when you sit down and have a meal with someone and you're there for a good length of time, these conversations just start to evolve into real pastoral conversations as well that we wouldn't have got to had we not had that meal, or we would have just been expected to know, but never really would have got to know had we not had a meal with someone. And the amount of times that we probably get someone will grab us before the service and say, can we have dinner tonight, or breakfast beforehand, or whatever it might be, because there's something they want to talk about. And, that's a great opportunity to be able to do those things. Yeah,
you can plan in advance. I think that's a really great thing to do as well.
Yeah.
To think, is there someone that I particularly want to talk to today, and line it up beforehand.
Yeah, exactly.
Say, can we make sure we grab dinner?
Someone's asked me, can I chat to you about something? I'm like, yeah, let's have dinner.
Yep.
After the service, let's grab dinner and we'll go sit down again.
100%.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's really, really cool. And I think to wrap it up, as we're kind of coming to the end of this mini-series on meals, that's what it's kind of about. We talked about in the theological underpinnings of it, is that it's living out what Jesus has won on the cross for us as a community, expressing that unity in Christ. And we think that, as we've said before, meals isn't prescriptive. It's not prescriptive in the Bible, it doesn't tell us to do it, but we think that it actually is a really good way to help live out those prescriptive elements in the Bible. So it's been fantastic to have you guys along with us today. Thank you very much. Talk about the practice of meals. Thank you for your insights. It's been great. And that, like as I said, does conclude our mini-series of theology, strategy and practice on meals. Next week we might end up doing talking about how to get young people engaged in the church. That's another one we did on our polls, and we'll put the lens of theology, strategy, practice over that too. So that'll be really exciting. But if you do have any questions or thoughts, or like you're excited about meals after hearing this, get in contact with us. Just email me, joel@shoggersilver.com.au, and we can get chatting, and we'd love to talk to you more about it because we think it's a hugely impactful part of our church life. So we thank you very much for that. If not, just chuck a YouTube comment down there because we love the engagement. That really helps. And as always, we thank you very much for listening and or watching. And once again, I'll finish with thanking Tim and Joy.
I've been
so used to
confused
saying
with
Tim and Stu.
I've been confused with Stu before, so I'll take that.
Yeah, that's a hard one. Anyway, we'll finish with a one way. Thanks very much, guys.
One way.
One way.